The desert night was cruel, cold enough to pierce bone, silent enough to swallow prayers. A thin crescent moon hung over the horizon, throwing faint silver over miles of sand, sagebrush, and lonely wind. But beneath that endless sky, hidden between two boulders near a dried-up creek bed, something moved, something small, something fighting to live. It was a stained burlap sack. At first glance, it looked like trash left behind by travelers. But a closer look revealed a darker truth. The sack trembled, the knots were tight, and from inside, barely audible, came the sound that would change one man's life forever. A whimper, a gasp, a tiny voice trying to form a word no newborn should yet know. Emma, miles away, riding home after a long cattle drive, was Caleb Thorne, a tall, quiet cowboy known in town as the man who kept to himself. His horse, Shiloh, trotted slowly, both exhausted after a week beneath the scorching sun. Caleb longed only for his small cabin, a hot drink, and a night without trouble. But fate had different plans. As he neared the old creek bed, Shiloh suddenly stopped, ears twisting toward the rocks. Caleb frowned. "Easy, boy, what's got into you?" The horse refused to move. Then, carried by a cutting breath of wind, Caleb heard it too, soft, trembling, impossible, "Mama." Caleb froze. A man like him, a man who'd buried his wife 2 winters ago, a man whose unborn son never drew a first breath, knew what voices could do to the heart. This one sliced him open. He dismounted and followed the sound. His boots crunched over pebbles as he drew closer to the boulders. The desert felt suddenly alive, pressing in on him, urging him to move faster. There, half buried in dust, lay the sack. Caleb's heartbeat thundered. Dear God! He dropped to his knees, pulled his knife from his belt, and cut the rope. When the burlap fell open, his breath caught. A baby, barely days old, face blue from cold, little hands clenched, lips trembling. The baby opened her mouth again, but only a hoarse whisper escaped. Ma. Caleb's chest twisted. Rage, grief, disbelief. Everything collided at once. Who did this to you? He whispered, scooping the tiny body into his arms. The infant weighed almost nothing. Her skin chilled his palms. Her heartbeat fluttered weakly, like a dying butterfly. He tore off his coat and wrapped it tight around her. She whimpered, then pressed her cheek against his chest, as if recognizing warmth for the first time. "Hold on, little one," he murmured. "I got you now." With urgency fueling every movement, Caleb swung onto Shiloh and rode hard toward town. The wind whipped past, but he shielded the child, tucking her against him. She grew quieter, too quiet. "Stay with me," Caleb begged, gripping the reins tighter. "Don't you leave me, not you." He reached Dr. Lane's clinic just as the lantern lights were being lowered for the night. Caleb burst through the door. "Help!" he thundered. "Somebody help!" The older doctor rushed forward, startled. "Caleb, what?" "She was left to die," Caleb said, voice shaking, "in a sack, out by the creek." "Doctor." Lane didn't waste a second. He took the child, laid her on a cot, and signaled his apprentice to fetch blankets. For a moment, the room buzzed with frantic motion. Warm water, cloth strips, heated stones. Caleb stood silently, fists clenched, unable to breathe. Minutes crawled. Then, finally, the baby let out her first real cry. Loud, desperate, alive. Caleb nearly collapsed. "Doctor," Lane exhaled. "She'll live," he said. But she was minutes away from freezing. Caleb nodded, wiping sweat from his brow. Relief washed over him, but behind it simmered anger, white, hot and consuming. "Who would do something like this?" he asked. The doctor hesitated. "I have a suspicion." Caleb's jaw tightened. In a town this small, rumors traveled fast. He remembered hearing about a young couple, drifters, who had passed through earlier that evening. The woman looked terrified. The man reeked of whiskey and cruelty. Caleb sighed, brushing the baby's cheek with the back of his finger. She gripped his fingertip, a fragile, instinctive clasp, but to him it felt like a vow. Dr. Lane placed a hand on Caleb's shoulder. "She needs care, a guardian, someone steady." Caleb didn't answer, but his eyes said everything. He stayed beside her all night. By morning, word had spread. Townsfolk gathered outside the clinic, whispering in shock and indignation. A baby in a sack. Caleb found her. That man barely speaks to anyone, who'd have thought. Caleb came out holding the child, now wrapped in clean cloth, her tiny face peeking out. Shiloh nickered softly when he approached, as if greeting a new companion. Caleb glanced toward the horizon, where the morning sun burned away the chill. He wasn't a father. He wasn't even sure he deserved the chance to try again after losing everything. But when the baby blinked up at him, eyes a deep, stormy blue, something anchored itself inside him, purpose, redemption, a second chance he never asked for but desperately needed. He named her Hope, because she had survived when she wasn't supposed to. Because she had called out into the dark and found him. Days turned into weeks. Caleb built a cradle by hand, carved tiny wooden animals to hang above her bed, and warmed milk daily on the stove. He talked to her, sang to her, carried her everywhere, including to the barn where the cattle seemed to sense she was special. Town gossip slowly turned to admiration that Cowboy was born to be a father. Hope saved him as much as he saved her, but trouble wasn't done with them. One cold afternoon, as Caleb chopped wood outside his cabin, 2 horses approached. On their backs rode the drifters, the same man and woman he had suspected. The woman looked sick with guilt. The man looked angry. Caleb stepped forward, jaw set. "State your business." The man spat. "We want the baby back." Caleb's pulse surged. "You left her to die." "It was her idea." The man snarled, jerking his thumb at the trembling woman. "Weak stomach. I told her to toughen up, but you put her in that sack." Caleb growled. The man smirked. "We changed our minds." "No," Caleb said firmly, "you don't get to change your mind." The woman suddenly burst into tears. "Please, don't give her to him. He was going to sell her. I couldn't stop him." Caleb's hands clenched. The man tried to step forward, but Caleb drew his revolver, not to shoot, but to warn. "Turn around," he said coldly. "And don't come back, or you'll answer to the sheriff." The man cursed, but under Caleb's unwavering glare he backed off. The woman stayed a moment longer. "Thank you," she whispered brokenly, "for saving her." Caleb watched them ride away, relief sinking into his bones. He went back inside, lifted Hope from her cradle, and held her close. "You're safe," he whispered. "Nobody's taking you away, not ever." Hope cooed softly, tiny fingers reaching for his chin. Something changed in Caleb that day, not just a promise, but a transformation. He wasn't the lonely cowboy anymore. He was a protector, a father, a man who had walked through grief and come out holding a miracle. Hope thrived. Her laughter filled the cabin. Her footsteps echoed across wooden floors as she learned to walk. Her first real word, clear, beautiful, strong, was not mama, but pa. And Caleb cried the first time he heard it, because a baby abandoned to die called out to him in the darkness. And he answered, not with fear, not with doubt, but with love stronger than the desert night. Hope had found her home, and Caleb Thorne had found his reason to live again.